But yes, happy 1 year anniversary to the project, I guess.
Yay.
We've survived. Yeah, we've
We've
done a
done
lot of
it.
cool stuff. But just kind of thinking back to the year, how do you feel about the project now? And has anything changed between today and February 1st, 2024?
Yeah, well, a lot. I mean, God, I love it. I love the project. I'm in my element with this stuff. It's fascinating. I'm not a folklorist by training. Previously, it was just a sort of hobby that didn't come into my job particularly. So I've had a steep learning curve in some ways, but an extremely exciting one to me. I'm also just really happy that we've been able to reach so many different people and different types of people, audiences through the events and the publications and so on, but also writers, storytellers, musicians, editors, school children. So being back in my old primary school for the first time in a third of a century to speak to the kids and watch them put on a wonderful play based on a folk tale from the village was well, and one that's completely fallen out of memory as well was definitely a personal highlight, but it's indicative of the sort of things the project's allowed us to make happen. And I'm really grateful to the HRC and to NTU for enabling all of this wonderful stuff to happen.
Yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful. And I personally am very glad about how tangible the aims of the project are, and how you can really see us achieve, or like the project achieve its aims, because this is my first postdoc after completing my doctoral thesis, and the 4 odd years of the thesis have very much been I sit in a room on my own doing stuff
Mhm.
with very little kind of broader public feedback. Obviously, I get feedback from my supervisors, but there's no sense of how it impacts the wider world. And this project is great for that, because you get that human factor of people. We've had a lot of really fascinating emails into the project email, and people getting in touch through the website or through social media, sharing their stories, but also commenting on the kind of stories that we've posted up, and kind of being really grateful that something like a resource like this exists. And it's been incredibly gratifying to see that.
Yeah, I mean it's a research development and engagement fellowship, this one, AHRC grant. And the engagement aspect of that, obviously we had lots of things in place and we hoped there'd be a lot of engagement, but that depends on people wanting to be engaged as well. And they really have been. There's been a real thirst for engaging with this project really fully from a lot of
Yeah.
people. And I found that wonderfully exciting and enriching. I really have. Yeah.
Yes, and that in a way is a great kind of argument against this misconception that nothing ever happens in Lincolnshire, that people from Lincolnshire aren't particularly interested in their own heritage, because through the last year, we've seen that that is absolutely not true. And that given the opportunity, people are really engaged and are really curious, from, school children to like retired citizens who are members of history clubs,
Yeah.
or who are interested in their genealogies. They're all like, it's just about creating these opportunities in these spaces for people
I
to
think it's
think
a
about
very
folklore.
sorry, Anna, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
think
no,
it's a
okay.
very a very proud county and a very interesting, diverse and disparate county. But a lot of people outside don't really realize that, I think. And that's
I'm really sorry. My headphones are being stolen.
that's not a problem at all. You've got a thief, someone jeopardizing your
Yes.
but so what's the event or discovery that surprised you most so far? Did you find something that you weren't aware of?
Well, first and foremost, when I started on this project, I wasn't aware about very much to do with Lincolnshire or Lincolnshire folklore at all. Um, what's the thing that surprised me the most? that's a difficult one because lots of things did surprise me. Um, the gosh, a gentleman got in touch with us through the website, sharing a rantanning rhyme that he heard
Oh
from his
yeah.
father-in-law. And rantanning is like folk justice, also referred to as rough music elsewhere in England, where if a member of the community is deemed to have acted irresponsibly, then the community will gather around their house at night and to sing and beat pots and pans and other noise-making implements and engage in various raucous behavior to kind of tell them to cease and desist. Um,
I
and
wondered why there was a guy outside the window smashing a wok. Okay, all right, now I know. Okay, thanks for yeah.
yes, pretty much in that spirit. I think like a custom that might be very relevant for this day and age. But this gentleman got in touch and shared a rhyme that went along with the rantanning that people performed. That not only like was used within living memory and fairly recent living memory, but also referenced a specific location in the county in the south of Lindsay, which I thought was an excellent example of how folklore is still very much alive.
Yeah.
And I think more than in any other county, being in Lincolnshire allows you to feel like a kind of 19th century folklorist because not a lot has been published.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that's
Yeah,
true.
because not a lot, yeah, not a lot has been published on the subject. Um, and a lot of the sources are very obscure. You've mentioned recently that the All Past Penny book, Folklore around Horncastle, was only published in about 100 copies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it does really feel like we're going out there into a bit of a terra incognita and discovery and uncovering things for the first time.
Yes, a lot of areas of the country had I guess many more people collecting their folk tales and keeping them alive in other ways as well. Excuse me.
Yeah,
And Lincolnshire was relatively poorly served in that way. And where it was done, it was very intriguingly done. But there was no systematic way of surveying these, of collecting folk tales across England and areas that received a lot of tourists and that sort of thing. So they
absolutely.
tended
They've
to
not
be
been,
better served in those ways. Yeah.
yeah, they've not been repackaged for tourists in the same way that folklore from Cornwall or Devon have been, or even Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, I knew most of that's certainly true. I knew most of the more locally well-known tales from a young age. I grew up in Nocton, so about 8 miles from Lincoln. You know, I knew about the imp, the buried moon. I knew that story. I didn't actually know it was a Lincolnshire story at the time. Stuff like that though, but I knew quite a lot of the tales that were local and some of the ones that are maybe a bit more obscure but are very local, ghosts around Nocton Hall and all that sort of stuff. But some of the more obscure discoveries included Billy Shuffler and the Lincolnshire Witches, which was collected as George Edward Kent in the 1860s, writes this down and says it was told to him by an old man who's no longer alive or something like that. And that's the tale well, that's what the kids at my old primary school at Dunstan, that's what they worked on with Adverse Camber and the storyteller Pin Stockman. And that's a wonderful story, but it's not known at all locally. It's just not. And it ends at Dunstan Beck. You know, it ends in the village, but it's not. You know, it's just not known, and now it is by those kids. And it's obviously that tale's obviously a variation of a tale that is very well known in Lincolnshire, and the story of Bayard's Leap, which has this place called Bayard's Leap, but the story of the horse and the witch there. And it's a very similar story. They're clearly related in some way, but they're different tales. Um, so I feel like we've also uncovered some examples, and that's one of them, of how tales can shift from one place to another through a sort of protracted game of telephone or Chinese whispers, how they can just change and become something else, appropriate to their specific location. And there are loads of examples of that, and people can draw their own conclusions by looking through, among other things, the folktale map on our website and see a lot of those points of connection. And I'm writing a book about Lincolnshire folk tales and landscape, and I've been reading all sorts of obscure texts for that, normally long out of print versions of tales, as I try to trace their often murky origins. So yeah, I've made lots and lots of discoveries. And a lot of them are rooted in things I knew something about before. But yeah, almost everything on that folktale map, actually most things on there are things I didn't know anything about at all, or I knew relatively little about even 18 months ago.
Um, where Lincolnshire is concerned, I feel the devil really is in the details. We've done a number of podcast interviews so far, and oftentimes people ask us what our favorite Lincolnshire stories are. So I would like to flip that on its head. What's a story that you really don't like, or what's a story that you wished wasn't associated with Lincolnshire at all?
um none of them really. I've got to be honest, none of them really. I mean, I wish the flower women hadn't been accused of witchcraft and killed in the early
Mm.
17th century sort of thing. Um, but I don't suppose that's really what you mean. Oh, that's related to they're the quote unquote witches of Beaver. But I don't know. Some tales are pretty horrid, sometimes pretty prejudicial one way or another, but no more so than in other places. I suppose more broadly, a trope associated with Lincolnshire that I don't like much, is that it's flat and boring and full of bumpkins, and it isn't, and it isn't, and it isn't. Though the fact that a lot of people think that sort of thing helps to keep its glories hidden, and maybe there's something good about that too. But the stories we've uncovered, anything that I particularly, um, no, I don't think so. The multifariousness of the ways people can be mean and tricksy and horrid to each other, on its own isn't something that offends me in the abstract, just in terms of particular real circumstances.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess for me, it's all of the murders, specific murders, I should say. There are quite a few tales and ghost sightings of young women killed by either their husbands or their romantic interests,
Yeah,
and or just young women interested in romance meeting a grisly end. I'm thinking of
yeah,
Nanny Rot, the kind of ostensible witch slash just old woman, potentially without a face or with a grotesque deformity of some kind, living in the
yeah,
woods, preventing a young couple from eloping by kind of putting them in a well or something. Um, but there are quite a few stories like that, and there are quite a few hauntings like that, and I guess I understand the cautionary nature of them, and I understand that oftentimes they do reflect like people's lived experience or people's awareness that that is a danger. I just guess I wish that wasn't the case, or wasn't the case to such an extent. And
yeah.
we,
I agree with that. I mean, women are often um, victims or um, little side characters or love
yeah,
interests in countless narratives, but those narratives exist, right? So I think it's uh I know you're not suggesting this at all, but I think not engaging with those things for what they are risks airbrushing out how that marginalization happened in the first place. So um but so I'm not in favor of that, but uh yeah, there are some interesting things that come to mind. For example, there are, at least I can think of, two stately homes, or sort of very large houses in Lincolnshire, I won't name them. You can dig around on the map if anyone's interested. But two I can think of straight away, which are associated with ghosts that do pretty traumatic things. Both young women. One jumps off the roof of the house. It's said she jumps off, and it's a common trope, isn't it? There are loads of ghost stories of that happening. And another one wakes people up late at night, or did wake people up in a house that's since burnt down, early in the morning in a particular bedroom, and starts talking about a devilish man. And loads of people have reported this happening. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, that's, a different matter. But where do these stories come from? Well, in both cases, the backstory behind them is that this woman was a victim of a man of the house, and uh, it would be perhaps wrong to use the term on a recording that's going to go out for what those men were accused of doing, but it's pretty horrendous.
Mm.
So what does that tell us about society, about power and privilege? The way men, particularly of a certain class, thought they could treat women, particularly of a different lower social class. Um, so I think they offer particularly interesting ways of thinking about. So these are the stories of the common people. So
Yeah,
they're not or less so than lots of other types of narrative. They're not controlled by the powerful necessarily in the same way. So it's very interesting to look at that and to think about what that maybe meant for a lot of serving girls in big country houses.
yeah,
Boys.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, sorry, is it
I
your?
think, yeah, I think it's your turn.
Have we confused each other? We've confused each other, or maybe I've confused you. Well,
Well,
I'll ask you.
I
So,
think it's, yeah, I think we're on question four.
no, you're quite right. So thinking of folktale creatures and magical encounters, what do you think Lincolnshire needs more of?
More everything. It'd be just it something I've noticed, and this is especially apparent with stories of the fenland landscape, whether it's the fens themselves or it's the cars further north in the county, that because the drainage happened so long ago, you kind of get the sense that there would have been more stories, but the landscape has changed
Yeah,
far enough back that a lot of the stories have been lost because the landscape isn't there to kind of back them up
yeah,
and to provide this kind of tangible memento like you have in the dead moon or the buried moon. The names vary, where the moon goes down into the cars, which are these kind of aqueous, aquatic, semi-aquatic landscapes with very treacherous uh, kind of still water pools and strange snags and creatures, kind of both natural and supernatural, inhabiting that landscape and wreaking havoc. Um, but the cars have been drained for the most part,
yeah,
so you can't kind of take your kid there and go, this is where the moon is buried, this is what it looks like. So in terms of more, I'd love to have more stories from the fens, more stories about, the rushes whispering and what the call of the bittern actually means. Kind of more tales of that hinterland between solid ground and sea. But you never
yeah,
know, maybe there are like antiquarians' diaries sitting on someone's bookshelves that will come to light and will provide that missing link. Maybe people will make new stories. So I'm open to that gap being filled. Absolutely.
I think it's surprising that there aren't more stories that we've uncovered which are from the Lincolnshire wolds, actually.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, talking about what going back to something you said there, anyone who goes on our folktale map will see that, for example, there are loads and loads of pins attached to little blog posts about the stories around the village of Redbourne, near Curtin Lindsey, not far south of Scunthorpe. And that's simply because in 189 in the 18 late 1880s, early 1890s, for a couple of years, Marie Clothill Balfour was there, and she collected stories from local people, and then they were published in the journal Folklore, and in 1891, and she just happened to be living there. She wasn't from there at all. Now, if she'd have been somewhere else, presumably she'd have collected the same sort of number of tales from people in that location instead. So just imagine how much we've lost, even in places which seem to have plenty of stories. We haven't uncovered all that many folk tales about the sea, so maybe that's one for me. I mean, almost half of the county border is saltwater, so that surprises me a bit. I suppose we've uncovered a few alleged sea serpents, the ghostly Mary Celeste style uh, shipwreck. Obviously, Havelock and Grimm begins at sea, and the story of the excise officer bricked up in the Vine Hotel in Skegness involves smuggling across the sea. There are some minor tales about lost settlements on the coast. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm surprised we haven't had more things on record that involve the sea. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm surprised considering how rich the wildlife, the kind of migratory birds and seals, that sort of thing is around the coast, that we don't have more kind of merfolk or selkie
yeah,
style creatures or swan maidens. Yeah,
yeah,
the beasties don't seem to be seen as particularly supernatural that we were able to find. Obviously, if again this recording is going out on social media, if you know something, if you know stories we haven't covered or you really want to share, please get in touch. Just probably by commenting on this post is the easiest way to do that.
yeah. Tell us what we don't know or what
Yes.
you know. Yeah. Um,
Um, Yes. So if you were collecting folktales in the county today, like Balfour, whom you've mentioned, had done in Redbourne, which kind of area or town would you go to and why?
well, maybe just because it's sort of on my mind now, having just said what I said before, but I might be inclined to go to Grimsby and collect fishing lore before it dies out. Or I'd head to the Fens and specifically focus on maybe even communities from the Eastern European diasporas and see what stories have come into the county that way. Um, but what other specific areas? I don't know. I'd love to go back to 1890 just for a bit. I'd take our medicine and all that, but and just do what she did. Take your pick. I'd go to where I grew up. I'd go to Nocton, Dunstan, Metheringham, places like that. See what those places look like and see what people are telling, what stories people are telling.
Yeah, that'd be
Record them, and
amazing.
then come back to now and engage with all that sort of stuff. When you
Yeah.
know about the sort of lore, the tales people told in a place, it changes your impression of that place, I think,
Hmm.
because you suddenly see it through layers, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'd do. I'd do that for purely personal reasons, but I think you could probably do it anywhere, and you could
Yeah.
find all sorts of stuff that was never written down. Was always told
Hmm.
differently anyway, depending on who was telling it. Some tales were clearly someone's party piece, and they'd fashioned them to suit their telling, and you get that through Balfour, but you also get that through Penny and others as well. You know, the few collectors that there were. Uh,
Yeah,
so I'd
absolutely.
see what people told me, and I'd bring a dictaphone. I'd bring my phone so I can record it.
Yeah, certainly much easier with modern day technology.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that we haven't really found much in the walls, and yep, I agree. I'd go to Louth. Louth or Horncastle. I know there's more
Mm.
folklore around Horncastle and more folklore around Horncastle
Yeah.
from James Oldpass Penny. And just as a quick kind of teaser of our upcoming symposium on April 11th at Nottingham Trent University, we're likely to have even more folklore around Horncastle from one of our speakers, which will, I'm sure, be absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
Ian, who's an expert on precisely that, and a group piece involved with what is it, Horncastle? I can't remember the name of it now, but
Archaeological
Horncastle history and
Society.
yeah,
Yeah, something.
history and
It's
heritage. But they're I know they're interested in potentially publishing an edition of James Alpas Penny's folklore around Horncastle and more folklore around Horncastle.
that'd be amazing because they're
Yeah,
incredibly difficult to find.
yeah, yeah, and they're fantastic as well.
Yeah, but also, yeah, um, I'd love to go to the walls and get more stories there. And as a little kind of personal legend, the last time I was in Horncastle for the project, I accidentally ran over a duck.
Oh dear,
It
oh
was
dear,
such a random thing.
murderer!
I was not going fast at all. It just kind of ambled in between the wheels of the car as I was stationary, and then I moved. Something crunch. And then I went back there and it disappeared. So take that as you will.
So
Mysterious ghost duck.
if anyone listening to this has been to Horncastle recently and seen a very sad looking ghost duck, and ask it a story, and we'll put it on the map.
Absolutely.
And Anna's a villain in this particular note.
You can absolutely send it my way if it wants bloody revenge. Yeah, what would you like to tell people who don't know anything about Lincolnshire folklore yet?
Um, it it depends on who they are, but I do like to tell people that some of the tales frequently associated with other places have their origins in Lincolnshire. Tiddymun, for example. So Kevin Crossley Holland is a very good writer and a very good poet. And he's from Norfolk, but he rewrote that tale along with lots of others, including many of Balfour, the ones that Balfour collected. But he set Tiddymun broadly in the Fens. But it's not. It's one that Balfour collected, and it even relies on the dialect around there in its original telling. Um, so it's from the Cars, not the Fens. But it's become a kind of fen. No doubt there were comparable tales, and beings that you would give offerings to. Of course, there would have been. But Tiddymun, that actual tale, isn't from the Fens at all. It's from the Cars. And he's moved it, and that's fine. I've got no problem whatsoever with storytellers doing that. But of course, the Fens is bigger. It goes into fashionable Cambridgeshire and Norfolk, and therefore that tale is now just associated broadly with the Fens, and it's
Mm.
possibly partly because of that, which is absolutely fine. But I do like to tell people of the origins of things like that, and yeah. Yeah, that'd be what there's a bridge in Cambridgeshire, which was named by a schoolgirl. It was opened. It's just a road bridge. It's not like not an attractive bridge or anything. It's just sort of a strip of concrete with some asphalt on it or whatever. Um, but it's called Tiddymun Bridge, so it's named by this schoolgirl. I think that's brilliant. I think that's great. But I couldn't possibly go over that bridge with someone and not tell them that Tiddymun's really got nothing to do with Guy Hearn in Cambridgeshire whatsoever.
Mm.
Yeah. What about
Fair
you?
enough. Oh, for me, well, I've been looking into the Witches of Beaver for quite a while now, and my sticking point is that um, if you read a modern retelling of the Witches of Beaver case, who were three women from the early 17th century who were accused of conspiring to murder the children of the Earl of Rutland and supposedly succeeding, and who kind of met grisly ends for being accused of that. Um, the the three women were a mother and two daughters, and the daughters were executed in Lincoln, but the mother didn't make it to trial. She died on the way to Lincoln at Ancaster, supposedly having asked for bread and butter as a meal and um, saying that may this bread never pass through her, may choke her if she was guilty of the things that she was accused of, i.e., being a witch. And then allegedly she choked and actually died. And if you are to read a modern retelling of the story, that episode is very likely to be dressed up as though the woman was asking for a trial by ordeal, which is a medieval custom, a judicial custom, where people are subjected to often painful or quite arbitrary tests to kind of manifest divine judgment of their kind of proof of their guilt or innocence. And that association between a judicial ordeal by bread and cheese and the Witch of the Beaver is a Victorian invention, as so many things are. And that a gentleman called Thomas Broadbent Trousdale, what a wonderful name, just decided to kind of give some justification to what he probably saw as quite an irrational episode, and decided to go, oh, there's this custom that's several centuries out of date, but oldie times, and so kind of linked the Beaver Witches to a judicial ordeal, and consecutive authors have just picked up on it and ran with it. It's not apparent in the source material. There's no reason to believe that she would have known about judicial ordeals or she would have invoked one. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Cite your sources, people.
No, yeah, well, quite. That's interesting, and that's how stories get told around. There's sorry, get passed around. Often if there's a truth behind them, and it's a legend in that sense, the truth can then just come free of its moorings anyway. There's I think it's the preface to one of Penny's two books. From the early 20th century, 1915 and 1922, they were published. Folklore around Horncastle and more folklore around Horncastle. But one of them, he meets someone at the he's in Winsby, which is sort of just basically on the edge of the Wolds. And there was the Battle of Winsby or Winsby Fight, a minor battle in the First English Civil War, and well, minor in a sense. Cromwell nearly died apparently, but significant in that sense, but relatively speaking, minor. No cavalry, sorry, no foot soldiers, only cavalry. So it's a small thing, but there's a rock there, the Slash Hollow Boulder, which is associated with the tail, and apparently has associated with the tail, and apparently has what looks like the hoof mark of the devil on top of it. And it sort of does, actually. If you go there and have a look, it's just a rock in a lay-by now, but it was in the field. And he, at the time when Penny went there, it was under the ground, actually. And so he was shown where it roughly where it was, and he was told it was associated. The battle had been the Battle of Waterloo had happened. No, not the Battle of Waterloo, but some other historical event that was obviously preposterously nothing to do with the English Civil War had taken part precisely there. And that's become part of the tale. They knew where the rock was, even though it was out of sight. But the history of the battle itself, they kind of didn't know anything about it really. Although it could be that they were just sort of trying to make Penny write something stupid. So we don't know that either. We don't know whether they were having a bit of fun with him or whether they just really didn't know. But the history of it didn't really matter so much as there was one. And here's the tale, and they know all about the tale. The invented bit, that's kind of in their mind.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of folklore, where it defies authorized versions, even if they were having Penny on. That's fine. That is still part of the story.
Yeah,
and
that's
no
right.
matter how preposterous it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a folk tale for almost every occasion, which is not surprising because they're just the stories of the people. And so yeah, they come up quite a bit in my conversation, which won't surprise you. But yeah, so I like to tell people lots of things, and but especially things where there's something that's wrong about them or interestingly different. We've got 6 months left precisely on the project. What can people expect from us in that time?
Lots of things, lots of exciting things. So we have our poetry and literary fiction anthology that reimagines where 14 of celebrated Lincolnshire authors, including plus Rory, um, who is
I'm the fly
also
in the ointment.
no such thing. Just wanted to mention you personally. Yeah, so basically it's an anthology that reimagines various Lincolnshire folk tales for the 21st century and has reflections by the authors of why they engage with certain folk tales and how they changed them or what they added or what they felt drawn to, and little explanations on the stories themselves, which were a great fun to write. Rory and I wrote them. So that's coming out. We've got the first book launch coming up on February 20th in Nottingham at Five Leaves Bookshop. We'll link a place that you can get your free tickets down below in the comments or in the description. But then we're going on a bit of a tour of Lincolnshire with various other launches. So just keep an eye out on our socials. We'll be announcing them as they come up.
Yeah, we've
Uh,
got Brig, Lincoln University Library, one of our
yeah, we've got Boston.
Boston
We're
Book
and
Festival.
we are looking at other places as well. So if you know of a bookshop or a heritage venue or like a local club that you feel will want to host something like that, please do get in touch. We'd love
Yeah.
to come and do a reading. We've got our symposium, our academic symposium coming up in April. That's hosted at Nottingham Trent University. Again, free to attend. And we're just sorting out the speaker program. We've got some truly amazing, insightful submissions,
Yeah.
not just about Lincolnshire, but definitely also about Lincolnshire. So that's really exciting.
We'll have a storyteller there as well, won't we? We'll have a storyteller as one of the keynotes, and the other one's the superb academic keynote, Kerry Holbrook. Um,
Yeah, we'll be making a bit
Paul
more
Ewing.
of a noise about that soon. Yeah, what else do we have coming up? I'm just more of this. We're always looking for stories. We're always looking to hear new stuff, share new stuff. We'll keep being active in social media, keep updating the website with the blogs on the website.
We've
So
got
if
more
you
publications, more magazine publications with our with in places like Lincolnshire Life and podcasts and broadcasts from both of us, including with our friends at BBC Radio Lincolnshire and the
yeah,
Secret
I'm
Lincolnshire
doing an episode of
podcasts.
Secret Lincolnshire. They'll be out soon. So lots of exciting things. And
Yeah.
yeah,
An event
any
at Navenby, Mrs. Smith's cottage. We've thanks to the wonderful Sophie Clark who works there, we've got another event there where we'll be talking to people about local folk tales in February 17th February, I think. A talk about folk tales and gardens and gardening and horticulture for Rugby at Rugby Town Hall. Other lots of other little events coming up as well, won't there? There'll be loads more things in the pipeline. Eventually a book from me on Lincolnshire folk tales and landscape. What else,
yeah,
Anna? Trying to think.
a paper from me on
Oh yes.
the Beaver Witches that's hopefully going to be open access at somewhere
Yeah, somewhere
in a journal to be
somewhere good, but
confirmed.
it's an excellent essay. The more blog posts on our guest writers blog, a toolkit to help people teach folk tales, which is put together with our partners Adverse Camber and Penn Stockman, the storyteller who led on that part of the project, is developing that with us. Of
Yeah,
course, we'd love to hear from or continue hearing from as many people as possible. We will keep continuing to update our folktale map and other parts of the site as more information comes to light. So yeah, anyone listening to this or watching this is potentially very, very important to that.
And the best way to get in touch and stay in touch is either through social media, wherever you're watching this. You can email us on Lincolnshire Folk Tales project at gmail.com, or comment on
Oh,
any of our
is it
posts.
Lincolnshire? I think our
Is it just Lincolnshire Folk Tales? Does it
hilarious.
not
We
have
don't know
project in
our
it?
own email address. We don't know our own we are Lincolnshire Folk Tales at gmail.com.
Gmail.com. Okay.
But our
So
website is lincolnshirefolktales.project.com. And the
yes.
reason for that inconsistency is because I'm an idiot. But it's Lincolnshire Folktales at gmail.com or Lincolnshire Folktales Project.com.
Yeah. We'll have all of the details below, but we're also on X, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. So please do give us a follow there. And we look forward to hearing from you and to sharing more stories with you. Here is to another 6 wonderfully collaborative months.
Here's to 6 months as we enter our geriatric phase. Let's enjoy it. And as we
We're
go
not
through time,
geese.
and yeah, if I were I not partly responsible for it, I'd definitely follow our social media because we don't half post some good stuff, don't we? So yeah, the things we find or come across, yeah,